This is the first year in a long time that I haven't entered the Bead Society Victoria's Bead Challenge. But what I did do is I still supported them by purchasing one of their challenge packs, and I have the beads here, and I thought what would be fun this year is to go through the challenge process with me. Let's take a look at what's in the challenge pack and what ideas might be spurred on from this pack of beads. Okay, this is the pack of beads that I received in my 2025 Bead Society of Victoria Bead Challenge, and it's very nicely presented in a little organza baggie. I have a 28mm antique silver square filigree, and this is a little metal component. It's very light, but it's got some beautiful markings on there, a little flower in the middle and some swirls throughout. I think that's really lovely. It's like an antique silver sort of colour. We have some 12mm cushion cut crystal stones in sapphire, and there's 3 of those, and immediately my first thought is, why isn't there 4? I would want 4 because this has 4 points. And my first thoughts are, what could I do with 3 stones and something with 4 points? Gorgeous sapphire colour. And some 6mm Preciosa crystal bicones in a gorgeous sapphire colour. So these are super pretty. Now there's 6 of those. So already it's quite a challenge with this pack because we've got an even amount of these, and we've got an odd amount of those, and a single component here. Now, the real challenge with these is to work out exactly what you're going to make and what you're going to add with it. And my first thoughts would be, how am I going to use the main or the biggest component in this piece? So I think it would be nice layered with something behind it that shows through. I think maybe a nice piece of metallic leather would really be pretty. And I might even like to put something over it to magnify this glorious shape. I'm thinking maybe a piece of leather, and I selected something out. Got this circle of metallic shiny, it's I would say it's man-made metallic shiny bezel, and you can see when I put the filigree on there it really glistens through that shape, and it adds another colour in here. It brings us from pink to purple to that sapphire blue. Look, it goes really nicely with the sapphire blue. A bit reflective under my studio lights, but you can see the effect I like there. And then I did pick out one of these glass dome cabochons, and let's just see what size that is on my ruler. This is a 40mm round dome, and if I just place that over the top there, we get a really lovely magnified version of this. Sorry about the reflections here from my studio lights, I can't do much about that, but I really like the way that that is looking. So I think that will be my first step in this design. I then need something to connect all of this to, and I think I'll use a piece of foundation. I might use black on this occasion, and I'll go and get a piece of that now. Alright, so I've got a piece here of, this is just a stiffened felt. It's quite thick, but I like the thickness of it. And I'm just going to lay that down here. We might put a bit of glue on the back of this, and then we're going to stitch this one into position, I think, too. I think because I've got quite a 3-dimensional effect going on here, I wouldn't want to glue this on top. I'm going to have to hold that while I bezel it to give that nice magnified look without any goopy glue bubbles. So let's just, I think the first step is just to, I'm going to clean off my circle there because it got a few fingerprints. We'll glue this into position, and I'm leaving a bit of space around to give me to play with later. And let's see, where's my E6000? Just going to use a little bit of this E6000 glue, and I tend to try and use this glue up by rolling this up so that my glue doesn't dry out. They have a tendency to dry out really quickly, so I always buy the smaller tubes even though I use a lot of it, and then just roll the tube up so that my glue doesn't dry out. Just doing a little perimeter of this and then a bit of a blobby, and I'm using the tip of the glue just to spread that out. Now I think I'll do the pink at the top. It gives a nice sunset over the water type vibe. Glue that into position. And it was a bit curly before I stuck it down. Oh, now I've got E6000 on it. Just rub that off. It was a bit curly before I stuck it down, but now I've put it in place. It's quite good. And I am going to clean that with a tissue before we put our little filigree over the top, just to make sure it stays nice. I'm annoyed I got a bit of glue there, because that's... Okay. Put this over the top. Now I'm going to just see where I think the middle is there, and I'm going to use my thumb as like a little vice to hold it. I want it to be as centralized as I can get, because if this ends up slightly off center, you can bet we'll notice that later. Now I think if I use a little bit of file line and just do a few strategic stitches, like maybe just there and just here on each of these little corners, that will just hold that into place without it getting away from us. So I'll get some file line and we'll stitch that into position now. Don't move. Alright, so while I've got that pinned in place, I've got a piece of file line with a little knot at the end. Now I've got to be super careful here, because if I pierce this leather from behind in the wrong spot, essentially I'm going to make a little pin mark in it. So I'm just being super careful, watching where the needle's going to come through, and I'm trying to make only the pin marks I really have to in this, because if I mark this too much, I'm going to end up with little pinholes everywhere. Alright, I've done one little stitch over that tiny bit there. Tricky to see, but there is one little stitch. I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, I'm being super careful. Where's my needle going to pop up? Hopefully it's right where I want it. Yes, it is. Okay. Risky business. Trying not to make marks in this leather where I don't want them to be. Now, I don't know that this needs to be pinned in the middle. I think if it's got those points in the 4 quadrants of this piece of filigree, I think that will be enough. So I'm heading up towards, and you can see and where my needle's just about to pierce that, I can see where it's coming out. So I can guide it into the spot I want without too much damage to that piece of foily leather type stuff. It's like a imitation leather with a metallic-y effect on it. Alright, so I'll turn this so it's a bit easier for me to hold, and I'll do the same thing down here. So this will have very big tacking stitches on the back of my piece of suede, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to pin this filigree into position. You can see I nearly pierced there where I didn't want to be. Risky. Sort of got to get, once it's coming through, I've got to commit to that stitch and go, okay, that's where it's going to be. You can see the file line's hidden quite well. It's not showing up that I've stitched that on. I think it's quite a nice effect. We're creating an illusion here, but also holding it into place. And I'm just going to for that last one there. Alright, so I've pinned down all the quadrants there. A little bit of glue came through when the needle came through on that spot. I'm just using my thumb to get that to go away. Oh, it looks gorgeous. How pretty does that look? That's really nice. I love it. Okay, so what does it look like now if we place this over the top? Oh yeah, it's pretty. I think that's going to be a really nice feature stone. Okay, so what the trickiest part is going to be is holding this bad boy cabochon in place while we get our bezel built up. So I think I'll just rest that aside. I know that this circle is the right size for this stone. So I think what we'll do is just run a row of backstitch beads around the edge here. Now, I mean, do I want to do half-half with my bezel? Half pink, half blue, and sort of grade it to be matchy? Or do I want to do, like, the design's developing in my head as I play with this. Then I need to have a think about what beads I might use. What goes nicely with these? I think these are talking to me. They want to be like this, I think. On diamonds like this. They want to be something like this. And maybe because it's pink at the top of this, we should do one single pink one of these stones at the top, or do something else that I've got that's pink up there. Alright, I'm going to my bead stash to see what I can find. Alright, so I found this one, which it's the same size as these other cushion stones, still 12 mil. It's still got a sapphire core in it, but it's got pinky edges. So I think that might be nice as the central one at the top of this, because then it just helps that blue to pink gradient just really speak. So I think that's great. I think now we need some beads. I wouldn't mind using maybe some bugle beads in here as well as some seed beads. So I'm just going to go see what I can find to do that. Alright, so I did find some bugles. I found these twisted sapphire ones. I got these from Bead Expo a few years ago. And they're like a twisted glitzy sort of bugle. I think they'll be really nice. They tie in beautifully with these colors, and you can see they've even got like a little bit of pink reflecting off them when I move them. So I think that's going to be beautiful. And then I did spot these in my stash. These are a 2-hole tile bead in like a really nice hot pink, and I think that goes beautifully with the hot pink that we've got up here and in our stone. So I think they'll be fun to bring into this. Now I need to think about what other seed beads go well with what I've got here. So I might try and get a size 8, 2 size 11s and a size 15 and come back, and then we've got some stuff to play with. I picked out quite a few seed beads. I picked out 3 size 11s in the end. I've got this F399D, which is a light amethyst fuchsia matte, and it's like a really beautiful fuchsia lined with purpley undertones. Then I've got this Mayuki. Has it got a code? Oh, there it is. 11151FR, and this is like a rainbow finished matte blue bead. So I think that ties in beautifully with what we've got going here. And then I also picked this in the size 11. This is an opaque fuchsia luster. It's one of my favorite seed beads of all time. It's the 1465L. So I picked that out in 2 sizes. I picked it out in the 8 and the 11. And then I also grabbed a tube of size 15 in the Duracoat Magenta. So this is the DC4219. And I think that will be really nice if we're doing bezels around these stones and bezels around this. We'll need something to cinch in with in a smaller size. So I think that will highlight things beautifully. So I've got quite a nice palette developing here of beads. Now I need to think about what I'm going to make. Now it could be the lid of a box, it could be a show-stopping pendant. It'll end up being quite big, so I just need to have a think about what am I actually going to do with this piece once it's finished. I'm thinking it's going to be a centralized sort of neck piece. I think it'll have a big pendant and then either a collar or something around the neck. I want to make sure when I wear it though it's really comfortable, so I'm always keeping in mind that if I am making something wearable, I'm going to be trying it on often and trying it on my mannequin often to make sure that what I'm doing is actually going to be wearable once I finished it. So I think the first thing we're going to need to do is to get this clear stone here bezeled onto the front of that. So I think I'll use, what will I do? Will I do half with the bezel and do this towards the top and this towards the bottom? And then the glitz of this carrying it all the way around? I mean, we could try that. Or will I just do pink for the whole thing? I mean, I could alternate those two colours so that it's a stripy bezel with pink, 2 shades of pink. Or I could do this as a stripy bezel. This is where the challenge begins. It's really hard to decide where to start. The best thing you can do is just make a start. And you know what? I think I'm going to do the subtle tease of a stripy bezel with a matte and a shiny and show you what that looks like. It's going to make a pink frame all the way around this. It's going to contrast the blue well, but not so much the pink. Now I'm swaying back to maybe I should do a half bezel. Oh, I really want to bring, you know what? I want to bring the sapphire stones here and the sapphire of these bicones into the design. So I think what I'm going to do is do the bold outline of a bezel with this blue and then highlight it with this pink, because it's still going to tie in beautifully, but it's going to give us more opportunity to bring more blue in later. Yep, I'm going to do the bezel with this size 11 bead. Alright, so what I did here was I just trimmed around this to make it a bit more manageable. And what you can also do is just trim off the corners a little bit. It just stops your thread from catching on it so much and makes it a little bit easier for the thread not catching all the time. Alright, I'm going to be touching this leather a lot, and it does leave fingerprints on it when I touch it. So when I get to the stage that I can put my dome over the top of this, I am going to clean this down with a glasses cleaning wipe to try and make sure I don't have fingerprints in there for life. I mean, it's kind of good to have a little bit of yourself within your designs, but let's not leave my fingerprint on there where it's really obvious and able to be seen. So I've got my thread down the bottom here from previously. I'm just going to come across to the edge, and I want to do my row of backstitch beads right on the edge here, and I'm just doing a little stitch on the spot there just to secure that first stitch so it's not pulling on any of those stitches we did to secure that. So I've got these gorgeous seed beads. They're like a rainbowy matte blue. I have a real love of matte beads mixed with shiny, and of course we've got the shiny of this, so why not frame it with a matte to make it pop. Okay, so I'm going to pick up 4 seed beads at a time. If you're a beginner, it always helps to lay those seed beads down on the piece of foundation so that you can work out the distance of where that stitch needs to go for them to sit nicely. After you've been beading for a few thousand times, you start to not need to place them on there all the time anymore. And I'm going through those second 2 beads. So that's my first of a 4 bead back stitch, and I'm going to do that right the way around, and then we're going to peyote stitch off the top of it. these beads look really nice up against this fabric because they do have pinky rainbowy tones in them. A bit of E6000 glue. Trying not to pierce that leather when my needle's coming up. So I'll try not to bore you to death with doing backstitch the whole time. We might skip forward to where I've done this part. And see you when I get to the end. Alright, so I've done the row of backstitch bead embroidery around there, the 4 bead backstitch, and you can see it's just going to be on the outside of this stone here once we put the glass over the top of it. So I think I can start to peyote stitch off this, and I want to make sure that my tension's not too tight so that we can put this over the top of it once we've done a few rows. I think I'll do maybe 2 or 3 rows, and then we might pop this into position and see how it's looking. So when you're doing a bead embroidery stitch like this for peyote along the edge, you want to make sure that you have an even amount of beads in that first row. It's much easier to do an even amount of beads in a peyote stitch bezel. And then I'm simply picking up 1 bead. I'm going to skip one in that initial row and go through the next. And what this does is it makes that seed bead sit just on top or just out. If I lay that out like that, you can see it's just sitting on top of that bead. So now I'm exiting this next one. I'm going to pick up a bead, skip a bead and go through the next. Like that. You can see I've got my base row here, and then these beads are sticking up from that. And this first row, they'll sort of sit wibbly wobbly, that's okay. I'm not too worried about that at this stage. What I don't want to have is the beads getting too tight in this way. I want them to be sitting out, if anything. So I'm just going to continue that same pattern all the way around, picking up a bead, going through the next. And this is called peyote stitch. Sometimes it can be tricky to get your needle between those beads in that initial row. You just got to sort of wiggle it in until it goes right. Okay, you can see how that's going to form that stitch there, coming off that foundation row, and we're going to have them sitting up here like this. They're going to hug the edge of that stone like this. Okay, going to do that all the way around. Okay, so I've peyote stitched almost all the way around. I've just got the one last bead to add, and I'm going over the top of this one. I'm going into that one there. And then at the end of the row of peyote stitch, you just need to step up into the first bead we added in that round. So on this occasion, it's this bead here. And that means now that I've stepped up, I'm ready to do my next row. And we'll just see how this is fitting. That's looking good. Now when I do this next row of peyote stitch, it's going to start to pull up towards this stone. So what I'm going to do is just get myself a nice soft tissue, and I'm going to just clean any fingerprints off this piece of metallic-y leather, because I don't want those fingerprints to be there like that. And then I'll just do this side, the flat side of the stone, just make sure that's nice and clean too, and we're not trapping any dust in between the 2 layers. You can always wipe down the outside of the stone afterwards. And for this row, because it's starting to come up the edge of it, I'm going to hold the stone in place while I do my next row of peyote stitch. And this row should be easier only because I'm going through the up bead. I don't have to skip a bead and go through the next. I just go through each of these beads that's poking up. So pick up a bead and go through the next up bead like that. And then as I'm pulling the beads together in this row of peyote, you can see it's starting to come up the side of the cabochon there. So I'm just using my thumb to hold these layers together and keep that in position. You can see that starting to create the edge. So this is moving around quite a lot. I'm using my thumb to just hold it, and then eventually, once we've built up this bezel around the edge, it will start to hold it into place just a little bit better. Alright, so I just continue going around. I'm really pleased with my choice of the blue. I think this is framing it really nicely. It looks good. Oops, I flicked a bead away. So I'll just continue peyote stitching like that around the edge. And you can see after I add each bead, I'm just pulling that thread, the working thread, just pulling that up tight to cinch that bezel in around the edge of the cabochon, like that. So I think after we've done this row, we'll probably need maybe one more row of 11s, possibly two, before we switch to a smaller bead. We'll see how it's looking after this first row, and then we'll do one more, I think. Okay, sorry about the reflection from the lights, but you can see I've done my all the way around the outside of that. Super reflective leather is making those lights a little bit annoying. Let's get a piece of something to block one of them. That doesn't help either. Anyway, I think that's starting to look really nice, so I'm going to add another row of peyote stitch. It's a little bit wobbly at this stage, but it's starting to grip into position. I think one more row and then some size 15s and we'll be laughing. So add the next row in the same way, just picking up a bead, adding that into the next gap. And this row here is just starting to come up over the lip of that cabochon, so they will hold this nicely into position. And I will be back with you once I've finished this row. Okay, so with that next row, you can see that it's right up to the edges of the cabochon, and it's holding that into position quite well. It is fluting just a few spots where it's just sort of coming out, and that is a sure sign that I need to switch down to a seed bead that's a little bit smaller for the next part. So I've got my size 15 Duracoat magenta. I'll just put a few of those out, and I'm going to do the same thing with the peyote stitch, only this time I'm just adding the one size 15 in each gap. And you can see as I'm pulling that in, see how that's sort of cinching around the cabochon bezel really nicely. It's pulling it in tight towards that glass cab, and it's going to make it so that that cabochon can't come out. It'll be trapped there for good now. So I'm just gradually making my way around. I think the contrast between the blue matte beads and the shiny pink ones is a really lovely finish. It makes them pop and stand out a bit, but it also looks really nice with the colours of that foily leather in the back there. So I'm really pleased with the colours I've picked here. Sometimes when I'm beading, I find that the beads that I've selected perhaps aren't giving the effect that I want, And I'm super happy to just undo and pick something else on those occasions. You know, if you think something doesn't look right, then you're best to stop and make a little change, see if you can make it have more contrast, or, you know, is it looking too busy or is it looking nice? And I think on this occasion, with just the 2 colours in this piece so far, I think is really nice. Well, it's actually 3, because we've got the antique silver and then we've got the blue and the pink, but you can see how they marry really well together because we haven't gone too crazy with our colour selection. We're sticking to a fairly simple palette so far and just letting those 2 colours work nicely. 2 colours on a neutral. We've got the pink and the blue with the neutral of the antique silver. And I'm loving the way this is looking. I'm really pleased with how the stone is getting set on the edge there. I wish you could see how beautiful this is without the reflection of my filming lights. I really wish those 2 lights would go away. But I need those so that you can see what I'm beading. It's just a reflection issue on film. Anyway, keep doing this edge. Okay, that's the last bead into position. And now I'm just going to step through another couple of beads. So I can pull that up tight, and I think that bezel looks really nice. It's come up beautifully.